October 7th, 2023, a day of infamy. The Israel-Hamas conflict escalated dramatically on October 7th, 2023. This day marked a turning point in the decades-long struggle. It was a day that shattered any semblance of peace. It was a day of unimaginable violence and fear. The early morning calm was shattered by a barrage of rockets fired from Gaza into Israel. Hamas, the militant group controlling Gaza, launched a surprise attack. This attack targeted Israeli towns and cities near the Gaza border. It caught many Israelis off guard. Simultaneously, Hamas militants infiltrated Israel through land, sea and air. They used tunnels, paragliders and boats to bypass Israeli defenses. This multi-pronged assault overwhelmed Israeli security forces in the early hours. The day unfolded with horrifying scenes of violence. Hamas militants attacked civilian targets, including a music festival. Videos of the attacks, widely circulated on social media, shocked the world. This day, October 7th, 2023, would forever be etched in the memories of Israelis and Palestinians. Hamas's surprise attack marked a significant escalation in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The scale and audacity of the operation were unprecedented. It shattered the relative calm that had prevailed since the last major conflict in 2021. The attack aimed to inflict mass casualties and sow terror among Israelis. Hamas claimed responsibility, framing it as retaliation for Israeli policies in Jerusalem and the West Bank. However, the targeting of civilians drew widespread international condemnation. The attack triggered a wave of fear and anger within Israel. It exposed vulnerabilities in its defense systems, particularly its intelligence data. It also reignited debates within Israel about its security strategy and its policy towards Hamas. The attack's impact extended far beyond Israel's borders. It sent shockwaves through the region and the world. It raised fears of a wider regional conflict and prompted international calls for restraint. Israel responded to Hamas's attack with swift and overwhelming force. It launched Operation Iron Swords, a military campaign aimed at crippling Hamas's infrastructure and military capabilities. Israeli airstrikes targeted Hamas command centers, weapons depots and tunnels. The intensity and scope of the bombing campaign were unprecedented in Gaza. Residential areas were also hit, resulting in significant civilian casualties. Israel also mobilized ground troops along the Gaza border, preparing for a potential ground invasion. The Israeli Defense Forces called up reservists and amassed tanks and artillery. The stated goal of Operation Iron Swords was to degrade Hamas's ability to wage war and deter future attacks. However, the operation also resulted in widespread destruction and displacement in Gaza. Section 4, Gaza under siege, a humanitarian catastrophe. The conflict in Gaza quickly escalated into a humanitarian catastrophe. The densely populated enclave, already grappling with poverty and a fragile infrastructure, bore the brunt of Israel's military offensive. The relentless airstrikes and artillery fire caused widespread destruction. Homes, hospitals, schools and essential infrastructure were reduced to rubble. The death toll, particularly among Palestinian civilians, soared. The conflict displaced hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their homes. Many sought refuge in UN-run shelters, already overcrowded and under-resourced. The humanitarian situation was further exacerbated by Israel's blockade of Gaza. The blockade, in place since 2007, restricted the flow of essential goods, including food, fuel, and medical supplies. Section 5, The World Reacts. Outrage, condemnation, and calls for peace. The international community reacted to the escalating conflict with a mixture of outrage, condemnation, and calls for peace. Governments, international organizations and individuals expressed their horror at the violence and the mounting civilian casualties. The United Nations Security Council held emergency meetings to discuss the crisis. However, efforts to pass a resolution calling for a ceasefire were repeatedly blocked by the United States, Israel's closest ally. The Arab world, already grappling with internal divisions, struggled to formulate a unified response. Some countries, like Egypt, attempted to mediate a ceasefire, while others condemned Israel's actions in Gaza. Protests erupted in cities worldwide, with demonstrators condemning the violence and expressing solidarity with both Palestinians and Israelis caught in the crossfire. Section 6. A year of devastation, the long road ahead. A year after Hamas's surprise attack, the Israel-Gaza conflict remains unresolved. A series of ceasefires brokered by regional powers have failed to hold. The cycle of violence continues, albeit at a lower intensity. The conflict has exacted a heavy toll on both sides. Thousands have been killed, including a significant number of civilians. The physical and psychological scars of the conflict run deep. The international community continues to call for a negotiated solution. However, mistrust between the parties remains high. The underlying issues fueling the conflict, including the status of Jerusalem, the right of return for Palestinian refugees, and the future of Israeli settlements, remain unresolved. The path to peace remains elusive. Achieving a lasting solution will require both sides to make painful compromises and a renewed commitment from the international community to facilitate dialogue and reconciliation.